Well, good morning, Dam Fam. Today, recording day is Friday, August 7th, 2026, and we are at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge today. On our show, we are going to talk about Donald Trump calling our trade negotiators nasty again, which means we must be doing something right, because that's what he did last time. Too. All right. And we'll also talk about our prime minister keeping calm and carneying on in the face of all of it, and some economic data that is giving us a cause for a little bit of optimism. So grab your favorite bevy because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 958 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada! Always 100% Canadian, and always, of course, beaverific. And I just realized that I didn't bring any beaver moistener for the show today. That may be a very difficult to overcome oversight a little later on, but we'll do what we can. On fait ce qu'on peut, and that's pretty much the theme today. Thank you, all of you in the live who have had the patience to remain here at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge. We have been having some pretty big tech difficulties today. Couldn't get my show notes open at first for some reason on my laptop. I was getting some very weird screens. Eventually tried to reboot, and that seems to have worked. When I was trying to get into my email, I couldn't do that either for some reason. And then I was trying to broadcast the show using the cell phone because it's a better audio and video quality typically. And it was not happening today. The phone just would not work with Restream whatsoever, so I decided to flip the inputs, broadcast through the laptop, and use the phone for the notes. It seems to be working for now, because normally when I'm broadcasting through the laptop, it doesn't work. Yes, little red-faced beaver got lots of sun over the past few days at the National Bank Open, but yesterday I did have that tennis match that I told you about, and we'll get back to that later because I need to finish the introduction. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And not with me as usual is my good friend Mr. Grizzly, but you will see him tomorrow because we will be having our pubcast at the Lieutenant's Pump in Ottawa. So if you would like to come down there on Elgin Street tomorrow around 1 p.m., we'd love to have an audience. If you'd like to even be a guest, we'd love to have you on. But we love to meet members of the greatest damn fam, or I should say the best damn fam in all of podcasting. We'll leave the greatest to the people down below. The best damn fam in all of podcasting. So please, if you would like to come by the pump and say hello or even participate in the show, we would love to see you. All right. But we are at the Ottawa Beaver Lodge, and we don't have Mr. Grizzly, but we do have another bear for you. Oh, yes, kids and cubs. It's if you're not a long timer here, this is Alistair McBear. He is the president of the corporation, the boss, does the performance evaluations, and what's that? Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, does performance evaluations, and apparently it's performance evaluation day to day. So I'm just gonna make sure that the boss has a good place to sit. There you go. I was looking over my shoulder. I see the damn fam is happy. You got Kid Lane going, there he is. Kid Lane going, yay. He doesn't say much, but when he talks, he really means it. All right, so Alistair Redbear is here. Going to have a dose of Grizzly tomorrow. Things are wonderful here at the Beaver Lodge. They just are. How's your mental health doing today, kids and cubs? I am surprisingly chipper considering I had tech frustrations for 2 hours. Normally that doesn't put me in. But given how I kind of figured that out, I'm actually kind of proud of myself at the moment. But as I told you, I had a tennis match yesterday, and as you know, I had plans because I went to go watch them. Then I got inspired. Then I had ideas. So I played my friend James. Get Linda going, Alistair McBear's looking kind of judgy today. Well, we are kind of judgy people, aren't we? And sometimes petty. But I played that match against my friend James. Wonderful, charming, beautiful man. And last times we've been playing, we're pretty much at even ability, but the times that we played this year, he kicked my backside. 8-4, both matches. And that normally doesn't happen. We're normally like a 9-7, 8-6, 9-8 with the tiebreaker type thing. So I had a plan, and I went out and I intended to execute it, and I did from beginning to end. No dips, no losses of concentration. Even though it was yesterday, it was 28 feels like 35, and by the end of the match, my legs were so wobbly because it was so hot. And I again, as I keep on saying, I look tropical. I am not at all. So this is unnatural circumstances for me to be outside in 35, feels like 35, running around and trying to win at anything sports. Just saying. And we got on the court, and I do not know what got into me yesterday, but I could not miss. I just could not miss. Right from the first point. I got caught. I was moving in because there was a ball that was short. And normally when that happens, I run back to the baseline, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, well, gee, I'm up front now, so I might as well just commit. And I went right up to the net. The ball came right to me, and I just gave it a boom like this, and it went cross court, sharp angle, super fast. I don't think I ever hit a ball that hard before in my entire life. And it stayed in, and it just the guy was running and put his racket down, and as he put his racket down, the ball just skipped right in front of him, and I'm thinking, damn, I should have recorded that. That's probably the best shot I ever made in my entire life. It's like, feeling pretty good about myself, and that's the way the match went. I don't know what it was, but I was up 7-3. uh, all of a sudden, I ended up, but around, by the time we got to 7-3, we were both like gasping for air, right? But I did end up winning 8-5, which is the most I've ever won by. Also, so I think I might have played the best match of my entire life yesterday. There's good serves, good speed on them, good variety, good racket speed, good strategy, good court placement. I, I don't know what it was. I felt like I had so much time when balls were coming to me, like to put myself in position and whatnot. So clearly, I was anticipating where the ball was going to go very well because I always seemed to be where I needed to be. So and he had maybe a slightly more off day with more balls going out on some finishing shots rather than staying in, and me having many more stay in than normally go out. So I won. I won. The victories have been very few and far between this year because, again, I'm trying to add new things, and when that happens, your game usually falls apart and it's a disaster until little things start to click. But yesterday it clicked. Everything clicked. And for the whole match. Because the last two times I've been playing him, I got ahead 3-2 and then had trouble winning another game after that. He just like blew past me. But yesterday it was me. I took the lead from the get-go, and I never, ever, ever, ever let it go. Boom! So, so I am feeling good. And clearly, I'm not burnt. It looks a little red here. I'm just very, very deeply not sun-kissed, but sun-French-kissed. Let's put it that way. But yes, so if you were sending any vibes yesterday, they worked. So thank you, damn fam. I actually, and I've won 2 of my last 3 as well. Very, maybe the tide is turning. The big club tournament is in a couple of weeks, so I register, of course. I'm far from one of the best in the club, but maybe. I have one victory in tennis tournaments, but unfortunately it was a walkover. And somebody said, hey, a win's a win. Yes, but this year I'm hoping that at the tennis tournament I will get one actual win and get to play an extra match. We get 3 matches guaranteed, hoping for one more. That's the goal this year, to get to 4 matches at the tournament. All right. Let's get into it, kits and cubs. Unfortunately, I will not have clips, and I really wish I could have clips today because the tone and the demeanor and the attitude which the words were delivered do matter, and they add a lot of color and texture. But I'm going to assume that given you know the players in this story, you can go into the filing cabinet here and recall previous instances of tone and apply them to the words that will be coming out of my mouth today. And I'm pretty sure you will kind of get the picture. Before we get into it, we do have one bit of sad news from the political sphere. Another passing. According to Randy LaRocque of CBC News, Todd Lewis is being remembered as a true advocate in Canadian agriculture and a salt of the earth friend. The Saskatchewan senator, who was also a farmer and champion for the agricultural sector, died on July 31st at the age of 65. His legacy lives on. Quote, "It's hard to articulate how impactful he actually was in terms of his leadership and his mentorship, his advocacy work, and as a friend," said Bill Przybylski, who met Lewis about 10 years ago, when Lewis was president of the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan. Quote, "He was instrumental in bringing APAS, a passive voice, suddenly to the provincial level, but also national," said Przybylski. Przybylski said he has been receiving lots of calls and emails from farmers who knew Lewis, and it's clear his death has left a big hole in people's hearts. Quote, "I think everybody that knew him kind of called him friend, because he was just that kind of person," said Przybylski. Chris Bosch was a lifetime friend of Lewis. They served on boards together and grew up in the community of Gray, just 35 minutes south of Regina. Quote, "My parents used to describe people as, quote, salt of the earth, which meant you could trust them with anything and you knew they were there through tough times," Bosch said. "So I used that to describe Todd." Bosch said Lewis was the kind of guy who always had your back. Quote, "I just think he spent his life looking for the greater good. It wasn't just about Todd, it was about the greater good for our community, our rural municipality, Saskatchewan, then Canada," said Bosch. Bosch recalled when Bosch required one more time. Let's try that one more time. Bosch recalled when Lewis was appointed to the Senate by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in February last year. Lewis took a to Gray because Trudeau wanted to learn more about canola. Quote, "He hosted Prime Minister Trudeau out at their farm and gave him a good insight as to what the farm was like and what canola is all about," said Bosch. "We had a big get-together at our rink, so that was all facilitated by Todd." The University of Saskatchewan College of Agriculture and Bioresources will create a memorial scholarship in Lewis's name, according to a statement from Angela Bedard Hahn, Dean of Agriculture and Bioresources. Quote, "This is a fitting tribute to Senator Lewis's leadership and contributions to our community. It will ensure our students continue to be inspired by the legacy of his passionate advocacy in the agricultural sector." Prime Minister Mark Carney offered family and friends his condolences. Quote, "Senator Lewis understood that farming is more than a livelihood. It is a responsibility to the land, to one's neighbors, and to the generations that follow. He carried that conviction from his family farm in Gray, Saskatchewan, into a distinguished career of advocacy that made him one of Canadian agriculture's most trusted voices," Carney said in a statement. Premier Scott Moe also offered condolences, calling Lewis a dedicated advocate for the province. So, I cannot say that I am familiar at all with Senator Lewis, so I cannot add any information of my own as to his political career or his contributions. But based on this article, seems like a person we would want to know. And when we say in politics that they are not all the same, that this would be a good example. Yeah, you know, when you get tributes that lovely, odds are you've done a few things right, and you've probably done them the right way too, and you were probably good to people on the way up, as we should be, right? So it seems like it's a big loss. All right, moving forward, I'm going to be talking a little bit trade today, because seemingly surprise announcement this week that our Canada-US Trade Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, was heading back to the United States. He was there last week. We came back. It seemed that there wasn't any specific or defined time for which he would return at that point. And then next thing you know, whoops, he's heading back. So when we received word, maybe about 2.5 weeks ago now, when the orange poop stain south of us decided that things were not going well for him at home and abroad. And once again, had to take out his boxing gloves for some sparring with his favorite punching bag. That'd be us, Canada. And announced that apparently Canada is a country that has such a child labor problem, or accepts goods made with child labor, that he needs to impose 50% tariffs on us on about $28 billion worth of goods that affect about 5% of the economy, and things that were covered and protected under CUSMA. So reversing his portions of his own executive order that he published a few months ago, not sure how many months ago now, stating that what was under Kuzma would be exempt from any of his tariffs. Well, not so much anymore, according to that announcement. Now, of course, he gave himself 30 days to tackle, and it seems that he and Prime Minister Carney had both agreed that trade talks should intensify. We hear lots of jargon and lots of jaw and jabbering from opposition sides going, it's like, well, Canada's not even at the negotiating table yet. So all of this is the negotiating table. All right. It's not like Mexico has been coming and sitting at it because they've been talking about all the meetings, sitting at the negotiating table, and we haven't. Our negotiating table is different than Mexico's because the United States walked away from the negotiating table after Doug Ford put out that commercial against the advice of Prime Minister Mark Carney, when it seems that there was a deal at hand, if one is to believe Ambassador Doucheface, which normally we can't, but it seems that on the Canadian side we had been saying that, and then recently in interviews and over the last month or so, Ambassador Hoekstra has been going on there and confirming that it was in fact Doug Ford that screwed everything up. I'm surprised that media hasn't picked up on that, given that there's so much blood in the water with regard to Doug Ford that there would be lots of articles about how Doug Ford screwed us over back then. But that's not happening. Maybe it will come in later. But if we are to believe all of that, we were right there. So one of these questions were, well, if we were right there, because why can't we not be right there right now? Again, right? We were on the verge of signing things, so these were terms that were agreeable. There has been some months that have passed by. There has been some water under the bridge since Doug Ford did what he did. Right? Mexico has some bilateral issues with the United States, as do we. We are discussing them initially. On the Mexican side, it's looking like they are coming to a formal negotiating table and talking these things out because, well, there was never an outburst from Trump. On our end, because Trump left the negotiating table, by the way, we never left. Now, we've had, a few people sitting there just talking amongst themselves and keeping each other company so that they don't get lonely. But we never left the table, right? We had the rest of the team pivot and say, well, if guys don't want to talk right now, that's fine. We'll just go keep on working on our plan to diversify our economy with a whole bunch of other nations and that type of stuff. And when you're ready to come back to the table, we'll still be here. We've left two people there, 2 or 3, to keep the seats super, super, super warm. Okay. But there's all these phone calls and all this activity. We hear all this buzz, right? Dominic LeBlanc speaking to Jameson Greer, and they're having these conversations, they're having these meetings. That's the negotiating table. It's just a table of a different shape. Right? So you got conservatives going, we have to do all of this, making all these concessions to get to the negotiating table. This is all the negotiating table. We saw it the first time around. We see it with Trump with all his other negotiations. He makes a deal, and then at the last minute, he has more conditions, or it doesn't work, and he pulls away, and he threatens a bunch of stuff, and then he comes back, and sometimes he does impose some things, and sometimes he doesn't, and you just never know with this guy. Again, it's like nailing Jell-O to a wall, right? So, but there's also lots of buzz going around that a lot of people are thinking that there could indeed be something emerging by the time this 30-day period happens. And if it's not enough to put an end to all of this, enough to maybe have Donald Trump do some of the things that he normally does, which is, right, like he's doing with Iran. I got some calls, and people were saying that they really, really want to make a good deal, and that they're really, really hungry for a deal. So, I decided to hold off on the strikes because it can't possibly be because I depleted our military supplies so badly that I don't really have anything to throw at them. Maybe. But so, but we've seen the plays, we've seen the tactics, we've seen him negotiate with other people. We've had the personal experience of being repeatedly singled out for very, very, very special treatment. Right? We know how this game is played. That's why we're not getting worked up. It's like, hey, Beulah, what? He called us nasty again. Yeah, whatever. Right? It's like, whatever. It's like, if Donald Trump is calling us nasty, but he's not calling anybody else nasty, that must be that we're doing something right. And again, that doesn't really fit very well with the conservative narrative, right? We're making all these concessions, we're showing up belly down, and we're getting nothing in return. I can't believe that. You had Pierre Poilievre there the other day just whining about that. And again, Cats and Cubs, I need to remind you, once again, when conservatives are making these statements, and they're claiming them as a fact, we actually had Kate Harrison on Power and Politics the other day saying, we've made all these concessions and we got nothing in return. That's a fact. She doesn't know that. She can't know that. She is the spokesperson for a party that has been demonstrating since all of this began that it might have questionable loyalties. There is absolutely no galaxy, universe, solar system, planet, continent, country, postal code, or area code in which the negotiating team for Canada is sharing very strategic information about what's going on in that room with members of the Conservative Party of Canada. Pierre Poilievre even suggested once that they be included on the team. Like, that is effing going to happen. You got Jamil Javani going back and forth to J.D. Vance, giving him reports about how things are going on in Canada. J.D. Vance, if you and your team are listening, I would suggest that you do not consider Jamil Javani a source, because we saw you on TV saying, Canada's economy is terrible. The guy who's giving you the briefings, maybe not up to stuff. Maybe not a source. Just saying. But on this particular front, as we keep on saying, in a trade negotiation, you do not negotiate in public. The United States does. They negotiate in public because they believe that the tweeting and all that kind of stuff, Donald Trump increases pressure and all that kind of stuff. The goal is to divide. Of course, Donald Trump puts all these messages about how we're making concessions and how we're caving and how we're doing this, and yet it's not enough, and he wants more, and how we're nasty and all that. And that gets the conservatives over here on this end. This, again, as Edward Coyne said in his editorial, taking the position that if there is something wrong, it must be Canada's fault. And even if it isn't Canada's fault, the obligation must fall on us to find a solution for a problem that is not us. And they're at it again. They are at it again. Even with this, you got Pierre Poilievre, as I mentioned, according to the folks at iPolitics. On the same vein, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said Thursday that Carney is, quote, putting Canada in a position of weakness by making a string of concessions before entering serious negotiations with the Americans. Making concessions before entering serious negotiations. Dominic LeBlanc is in the United States right now, and we have been told that he does not have a specific return date. Just open-ended. But the serious negotiations haven't been entered into yet. Donald Trump is so frustrated with us that he's calling us nasty again. And the conservatives want you to believe that not only have serious negotiations not been entered into, they seem serious enough for him to get so mad that he wants to slap another 50% on us. But that we are belly down, making concessions, giving them everything that we want, and getting run over. Yeah, that's why Donald Trump is so mad. Because we're giving him everything he wants. These people are nerds. He told reporters in St. John's, Newfoundland, that Carney was squandering Canada's leverage in talks by preemptively agreeing to demands from the U.S. to drastically increase spending on the military. Yeah, yeah. It would be, it's so terrible that Canada is drastically increasing spending on the military as a global superpower that is nuclear right next door is threatening to annex us. Yeah, don't spend on anything military when that happens. Just remain there and as a sitting cobra chicken for them to just snatch you. Dumb. Steel, aluminum being targeted. Well, we need to find some uses for it then. Here, military. Guess Pierre doesn't want that. High speed rail. I guess Pierre doesn't want that. Pierre keeps on talking about using our resources as leverage, but he doesn't seem to want us to use those resources on anything we build for us. Weird. Weird position for a party that is allegedly supposed to be His Majesty's loyal official opposition to take. Quote, I don't understand the strategy of making concession after concession after concession before even getting to the negotiating table, Polyev said. Many of these things were going to happen, but why not bring them to the bargaining table and get something in return for them rather than making every concession and then showing up empty-handed and in a position of weakness when we bargain? We did get one concession. Get some cups. Conservatives will never mention it, never acknowledge it, neither does our press for some reason. But Donald Trump signed an executive order exempting stuff protected under CUSMA, which led Canadian businesses and Mexican businesses, who at the time didn't have their paperwork for CUSMA compliance and exemptions, to be applied because the difference in tarification before all of this started wasn't really worth it to them. Well, they did. So more trade was protected under CUSMA as a result of this than was at the beginning. And we got Donald Trump to sign an executive order. And that held until these announcements of 50% for alleged child labor or forced labor, not so child labor, but forced labor from the country, again, that I keep on reminding you, has the school to prison pipeline, where people in their prisons, for-profit prisons, work for pittances, right? Creating products that are sold. If that isn't forced labor, I don't know what is. Right? And I mean, the guy who's accused of having gone to Epstein Island and to many Epstein parties where there were children allegedly working. Yeah, nobody's going to believe that Donald Trump has a problem with forced child labor. Somebody had to say it. So, conservatives, once again, seeming like they're cheering for the United States. Once again, doing the duty of the United States, the dirty work, coming into Canada and trying to sow division, trying to turn Canadians against their own government. And somehow still pretending that they can do better when we've been seeing them over the last year or so, and they are a mess. They can't even control themselves. They can't even run their own affairs. This is a party that raised $99 million to run an election campaign that they went into with a 26-point lead. and blew it and came out of it $15 million in debt. These are not people who understand the economy. These are not people who understand money. They understand how to raise it and spend it. But they're not particularly good at value for money. The Liberals, I think, raised about something like $60 million or something around there to run that election. Conservatives had way more. The Liberals were about to be trashed and ended up in the bottom. They won an election, which they then since turned into a majority. And Conservatives blew the lead. And the leader lost his seat. With greater than $30 million more to spend. And spend it they did. I will also remind you that there is no iteration of the Conservative Party of Canada that has left office when they were in government, leaving Canadians with a structural surplus in over 100 years. These people are not good with money. The reputation is unearned. It is entire mythology. And in my lifetime, at least, we've had the Mulroney governments and we've had the Harper governments that were conservative, and they left a metric shit poop of debt. And then we had the Chrétien Martin government that ran 8 consecutive surpluses. And the Trudeau government, yes, while it ran big debts in the first few years, but that was because Stephen Harper created a structural programming deficit by having announced tons of programs for years, getting the PR credit for it, and then not actually dispensing the money for them to happen. Well, that accumulates over time and the bill comes due. And then we got hit with COVID. And even though Liberals are not considered to be the economic party, managed to get us out of the worst health and economic crisis that we've had over 100 years, while sticking the mythical soft landing. So if you are asking me in my lifetime, objectively, which party is better with money in the economics, it's hands down the Liberals. Hands down, it's no contest. And then, as I keep on mentioning, when you see the election platform that Pierre Poilievre ran on last year, and when he released his costing, just prior to the night of the first debate, almost as late as you could in that campaign. And the costing was atrocious, number one. And number two, that's when he sprung upon Canadians that his big income tax cut, the one that was so much bigger than Carney's, he had changed it. Made some subtle little changes to it. And made it worth less than the one that Mark Carney offered ultimately. Just slid it in there, just a couple little words in a report out there, hoping that the Canadians wouldn't notice that he bait and switched them on an income tax cut. Tax cuts, that's the conservative thing. He couldn't even campaign competently on an income tax cut. That's how bad he is. That's how bad this party is. Because nobody in the party stopped him from doing that. Nobody in the brain trust said, you're going to kill our economic reputation with this type of thing. They let him do it. This is not the Conservative Party. These are not the progressive conservatives. These are not the conservatives. If you're my vintage, these are not the ones you grew up with. These people are not good with money. They are the last people from whom we should be taking advice. They literally suggested that we show up to the international poker tournament at which everybody's cheating, go to the high rollers table, and play with our cards face up. This is not a serious party. These are not serious suggestions. These are not serious positions. And once again, I will remind you that there is absolutely nobody from the Conservative Party of Canada that is either in the room or in the room next door. The closest one that they have are Lisa Raitt and Aaron O'Toole and James Moore, who are on the Canada-US Advisory Committee. And it seems that they too are not talking. You don't negotiate in public. The Conservative Party of Canada, all of their spokespersons, their influencers have no idea of what we conceded or of what we've gained. They have no idea whether we've been at the negotiating table all along or whether or not we're making concessions to get to the negotiating table. They have no idea because they're not in the room, they don't have anybody in the room, and because they are so disloyal and cheering against Canada, nobody's telling them. They're just making shit up. And what they want you to believe is that your government is failing. Regardless, what the Conservatives are doing, if you are paying attention, is that they are confessing to Canadians from coast to coast to coast that they speak confidently and smugly of things they know nothing or very little of. Just say it is, and we will do the rest. Who does that remind you? Just say we're in a recession, and we'll do the rest. Just say we are making concessions to get to the negotiating table, and we'll take care of the rest. Just say that Mark Carney is very bad at it, very poorly educated in economics, and we'll do the rest. Just say Joe Biden is corrupt, and we'll do the rest. It's literally Trumpism. It's literally Trumpism. They are not cheering for us. They need Mark Carney to fail so that they can have power. That's all they care about. They are not putting the best interests of the country first. They just cannot put Canada before themselves. They just can't. And maybe it's not even candidates won't. They won't. They don't even try. It's pretty disheartening, actually. So according to Kate McKenna, CBC, Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is back in Washington, D.C. for another slate of meetings as the latest U.S. tariff threat is just over 2 weeks away. A senior government official speaking on background said LeBlanc flew in Tuesday morning and is expected to meet with American senators and key U.S. industry leaders. It was unclear whether he'll meet again with his counterpart, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. The two met last week in Washington for discussions that LeBlanc called, quote, comprehensive. LeBlanc is also expected to meet and debrief in D.C. with Canada's negotiating team, including Chief Trade Negotiator Janice Charette. The flurry of activity comes ahead of an August 19th deadline, at which point the U.S. plans to put 50% tariffs on about 5% of Canadian exports to the country. The targeted goods range from alcohol to hockey sticks to cement. Greer told CBC News the tariffs were, quote, very tailored in response to Canadian trade actions that affect U.S. alcohol, dairy, and auto sectors. Editorial addition, these were Canadian actions that were also very tailored in response to unilateral American trade actions that nobody called for, nobody asked for, and nobody deserved, and that have proved entirely unhelpful to everyone in the United States the most since. But yet, they will not come down off the cliff because Donald Trump can never admit he was wrong about anything. We are paying for his ego. In response, last month, Prime Minister Mark Carney said he'd spoken with U.S. President Donald Trump, and the two leaders agreed to ramp up trade discussions. Quote, I spoke with President Trump earlier this morning. We agreed to intensify negotiations in the coming weeks, and the team and myself look forward to doing that, Carney said on July 21. He has also not ruled out retaliation if the additional tariffs are levied, but last week said he, quote, doesn't see the value in using Canadian energy exports as bargaining chips in negotiations. Now, again, Daniel Smith came out and said something about this, said, for her energy, not on the table, no way, no how. You need to be really careful when you're making these threats and taking these actions, because if we're looking at the real politic of the situation, eastern part of Canada, because Line 5 for oil passes through the state of Michigan before coming up, if we take that action, there's action federally that could be taken to stop that. And then that hurts us. And it hurts us a lot. Right? We do not have the built-in redundancy to take care of that. So, as much as I don't like Danielle Smith, she actually kind of has a point on this one. No, it's probably a self-serving point, but she does have a point on this one. And Mark Carney clearly sees it here. It's like there's no point in using that one, and there's no point in using that one now. It also doesn't help that United States has access now to a whole bunch of stuff in Venezuela, which is similar to the oil that we have. So there is a situation, if one could assume that the United States would be competent at building the infrastructure that was required in getting the oil out of Venezuela and being able to find people that would buy it, that would still want to do trade with the United States, which is, there's still several years for that can happen. But there is a situation out there where there are chess pieces set up such that, all of our oil that flows south could be, not all, but maybe a significant portion, somewhat displaced, and we don't necessarily have anybody else or anywhere else to sell it, at least for purposes that require it being burned for energy, for plastics and other stuff like that, and roads and things like that. Yes, clearly, there will always be a need, but right. So yeah, that's one of the things. Basically, one of the realities here is that yes, it might feel good for saying, hey, let's just cut off their energy, and, but they can do that to us too. In this particular, that's the way things are set up. So it feels good to say it, but if we actually did it, that would probably hurt us more than it would hurt them. In addition to trying to dissuade Americans from levying new tariffs, the Canadian government is looking for relief on sectoral tariffs targeting the steel, aluminium, lumber, and auto sectors, as well as moving towards a renewed North American free trade agreement. There has been some buzz out there that trade with regard to aluminium might be the door that allows us to might be the door that we can walk through, that allows us to get to other things, because once again, even though Donald Trump is denying it, the United States, again, with their folly in Iran, have used up so much of their weaponry that they cannot replace it fast enough, and that there are people wondering now, like, for example, if there was an attack on a United States ally, would the United States have the resources there to be able to stand up for its ally, and also ensure that it has maintained minimum protection for itself on its own home soil? Right? And you need a lot of aluminium for what you're building in defense. So he's got to replenish stockpiles. He probably can't replenish them faster than he's using them. Right now, they've had to slow down how much they are responding. There are certain things from Iran that they are actually letting go through if they don't feel it's going to hit something terrible, rather than sending something to intercept it, because they've got to manage the stockpiles now. Kind of makes it inconvenient to rebuild your stockpiles when everything that you need to rebuild them costs 50% more, because, well, you punched yourself in the dick. So that might be the door that we can walk through. Say, hey, you guys really need to resolve these aluminium things? We're happy to help you. Let's talk lumber. and potash and cars. No. Well, we'll get around to discussing your aluminum, but we have a whole bunch of other things that we need to talk about. So what the United States was doing to us, oh yeah, we want to do trade with Canada. We have these 5 sectors that are really, really important to us. Let's go into a room and where we can get Canada to give us everything we want on those 5 things, and then maybe we'll see what we can do on all that other stuff that might be important to you. Maybe. And considering how of the word they are, that maybe don't mean much. So, Prime Minister Mark Carney making it very clear that he is not interested in sectoral deals. He wants a comprehensive deal. We negotiate everything or we negotiate nothing. Tick-tock. Your stocks are still depleting and the aluminum still has an extra 50% on it. We'll still be at the table when you want to talk to us about it. Take your time. The more time it takes, the more you get depleted. Take your time. Better it is for us. Just saying. The U.S. has raised a number of irritants, including Canada's supply management sector efforts to regulate big tech and retaliatory measures taken by Canada following the first round of tariffs, including the decision from 8 provinces to including the decision from 8 provinces to remove U.S. alcohol from liquor stores. Last week, 2 major unions wrote to Greer calling on the administration to hold off on the 50% levies. The international heads of the United Steelworkers and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers called for the opportunity to find a better path forward. That's another thing that's been happening that hasn't happened so much in the early part of this, but now that we're getting to this intensification period, we're finding out that we actually have a few friends on the American side. There are a couple of senators. The senator from Vermont in particular didn't give people from the administration a particularly good time when he was questioning them. And now you've got, like I said here, the United Steelworkers and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers from the United States telling the government, stop this crap. Not helpful. And there's pretty much nobody in the United States that is advising the American government to do away with CUSMA. Despite everything that Donald Trump is saying, despite him putting the pressure on us by not saying that he wants to renew and just going year to year, that don't mean a thing. I mean, it does mean a thing that the fact, he wants us to be in this eternal destabilized dance of inconsistency and unreliability. But it doesn't mean he's going to cancel it. It would be the death of the American. The bond yields rates would go up, would just skyrocket up so fast that the damage that the United States would do with its number one trading relationship if it did that. So that is not happening. Donald Trump can threaten it all he wants. It could create the uncertainty. Ooh, I might not renew it. Ooh. But that's not a thing. Got to Kit Kat here saying, I'm sure Prime Minister Mark Carney has all the possible scenarios and how to react. He's about 20 steps ahead of these things. Keep calm and Carney on. Indeed. That's pretty much what he's on. I can see here, Donald Trump says, 50% tariffs on all this stuff. And I could just see Mark Carney go, you don't know. Oh, my word. So, LeBlanc back in D.C., and there's been a little bit of progress because, like I said, he went back last Tuesday. Now we're Friday. According to Darren Major of CBC, I'm seeing a picture here I don't know if this would work like this, but maybe it will. Hold on. Not sure if it does work. What is that? That looks like Canadians and Americans sitting at a negotiating table, doesn't it? Oh, man. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Canada Chief Trade Negotiator Janice Charette met with U.S. President Donald Trump's top trade envoy in Washington on Thursday. So we went down. We're going to meet with business people, whatnot. There wasn't even anything set up with Jameson Greer. That was on Tuesday, and whoops, on Thursday they're meeting. Well, well, well. But apparently we're watching this. LeBlanc was tight-lipped about his discussions with U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer as he left the afternoon meeting, saying in French that he was happy to be in the U.S. Capitol. In a post on social media later Thursday, LeBlanc said the meeting was, quote, constructive and detailed. Quote, our focus has been and will continue to be on striking a comprehensive deal that addresses sectoral tariffs and benefits Canadian workers, farmers, and businesses, he said. The meeting was slated to last only 30 minutes, but LeBlanc was in the trade office for an hour and a half. Again, the most precious commodity these people have are their time. We're conceding everything before we even get to the negotiating table, and we're not negotiating. It's like, here they are sitting at a negotiating table, and we're getting triple the time that was scheduled. That usually doesn't happen if there isn't anything going on. And that certainly doesn't happen at the initial meeting if nothing had been going on this entire time. The proof that the Conservatives are lying lies in the actual process that is taking place before our eyes. They see Dominic LeBlanc go to the United States without having a meeting scheduled with Jameson Greer when he goes down on Tuesday, sit in a meeting with him on Thursday, get triple the time, and say, I can't believe we're making these concessions before we can even get to the negotiating table. It's like, we can see what's going on. The version of reality that the Conservatives try to present to us is so far from what is so clearly there in observable reality, it cannot be believed. When Conservatives turn around and say, unbelievable, it's like, yeah, you're right. You are unbelievable. Because I have eyes and I have ears. I read. Oh, my word. Two sources with knowledge of the plans told CBC News that LeBlanc will be in Washington again next week. The latest sit-down comes after Prime Minister Mark Carney said trade talks would, quote, intensify after Trump threatened fresh tariffs of Let's try that again. The latest sit-down comes after Prime Minister Mark Carney said trade talks would intensify after Trump threatened fresh tariffs on hundreds of Canadian imports starting August 19. Carney said earlier this week that negotiators are focusing talks with their U.S. counterparts, quote, on all strategic sectors, including autos, as that new deadline approaches. The Prime Minister reiterated that position on Thursday, quote, we're interested in a more comprehensive deal, a global deal that addresses the strategic sectors, he told reporters in Saguenay, Quebec. Quote, we will get all of that by the 19th. Will we get all of that by the... Let's try that again. Will we get all of that by the 19th of August? We'll see. But we want to have pathways in order to get that. Last month, Carney said he'd spoken with Trump and the two leaders agreed to ramp up trade discussions. Former Quebec Premier Jean Charest, who serves on Carney's advisory committee on Canada-U.S. economic relations, shed light on that phone call in an interview with CBC's Power and Politics, saying it resulted in wider engagement from the U.S. administration in the latest round of talks. Quote, it's a good sign that the whole of the administration is more engaged in these negotiations than they were before that phone call, he told guest host Katie Simpson. It's a good sign that the whole of the administration is more engaged in these negotiations. It's the United States administration that wasn't engaged, not us. Again, we keep on getting the droplets of truth that the Conservatives insist on whistling past because it doesn't serve their narrative. Despite the ongoing talks, Trump took a jab at Canada on Wednesday night during a rally in Las Vegas, and I love this. And I love things that the way that Mark Carney handled it as well. I love tariffs, right? Because you've been screwed by tariffs used against us for years by China, by Japan, by South Korea, by Germany, by everybody, by Canada, Trump said as the crowd cheered. Canada's nasty. They are. They're nasty. I love the people, but they're nasty. Nasty leadership. Well, yes, Donald Trump, you have a long, well-established track record that everybody could see about your found love for all things nasty. Just saying. By the way, we nasty Canadians, you can keep your love. I believe as the song goes, don't give me no lines and keep your hands to yourself. Your very tiny hands to yourself. Don't get that ketchup on my person. Just saying. Because you probably don't wash your hands. Carney brushed off Trump's comment when asked about it Thursday. Love this. This is the perfect reaction, right? Donald Trump's an attention whore. The worst thing you can do to an attention whore is not give them the attention they seek. When they go out and they say things to get a rise out of you, and you do not give them that rise, that drives them nuts. Mark Carney engaging in a little psychological warfare here. Whatever adjective is used, we're standing up for Canadian workers, for Canadian businesses. You can call it nasty. That's fine. We're doing our job. Boom. Just like that. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre called out Carney's handling of the tariff dispute during a news conference on Thursday, saying, "It's time to get results. It's time to get results." Dude, if you want to have conversations about the results that either of you have been getting so far, I'd love to have that discussion. Oh my God, what a loser. We're calling on him to take the leverage that he has not yet squandered, take it to the bargaining table and get something in return for a change. Talking about somebody who squandered his leverage and needs to get something in return for a change. Oh, well, Pierre, speak about what you know. Oh my God. So much loser talk. I swear. Oh man. Oh, jeez. These people. I swear, if the stakes weren't so high, this would be the funniest shit. Grace goes, "You want nasty? I'm menopausal nasty." Get saucy. Nasty? We're just getting started. That's exactly right. If he thinks that us going into negotiating room and saying, no, we will not be playing that today. Thank you very much. But if you would like to actually play the games by the rules, we would love to. Let us know when you're ready. If that's nasty. And if he thinks that's Canadian nasty, he ain't seen Donald Trump, girl. As Randy Rainbow says, Donald Jessica Trump, girl. You ain't seen nothing yet. This is not nasty. This is not even close to Canadian nasty. Right? No. You need to watch a little more hockey, my friend. You need to watch a little more hockey. You might get a sense of what Canadian nasty is. Yeah, this is not nasty. Boo Boo Kitty. I'm sorry that your feelings are so delicate, but you haven't seen nasty yet. And what you have seen is the resolve of Canadian citizens. No government told us to not buy your booze. No government told us to not go visit your country anymore. Nobody in our government told us that if we had real estate in the United States, that we're probably going to be selling it now. Nobody in our government said that if you had an annual trip to Arizona, that maybe you would like someplace in Mexico better now, or in Costa Rica. There was no big push by the Canadian government to get Canadians to just decide, you say, you know what, United States, we're just done with you. We decided that on our own. Now, the boost thing was facilitated by provincial governments deciding that they were not going to put it on their shelves. But the federal government didn't order them to do that. We were disrespected. We were told that we were not appreciated. And then we looked at them and we said, oh, okay. Well, since you don't respect us, thank you for letting us know. We will go hang around with people who do. Have a nice life. Right? What else can you do in that situation? Made a unilateral decision. We accepted it. Prime Minister is always saying, the United States decided to change its position on trade, as is its right. But then it's our right to adapt. Right? If you have a roommate and your roommate decides henceforth, when they enter the house, they will be taking their shoes off and putting them on the table rather than on the shoe rack. They're free to do that. And you're free when you see those shoes on the shoe rack, not on the shoe rack, but on the table, to just put them in the trash can. So they can go fish them out whenever they need to wear them. Why are you doing that to me? Why are you doing that to my shoes? Why are you doing that to my eatery? You can do that. That's not fair. You can have that reaction. I'm just reacting. I'm just reacting to what you put out there. You unilaterally decided to change the rules. So since you opened the door, we changed the rules too. It's like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Don't hate the player for being better at the game that you called. That was your own damn problem. You just called the wrong game. That's on you, buddy. that's not our fault, and it's not our problem. And this is the thing that I like about this prime minister. This prime minister is not making it our problem. That's for you to resolve. When you do, talk amongst yourselves. And when you do, come back to the negotiating table. We'll be here, like we always are. So yeah, Trump and Mark Carney also a little bit may have entered the I have no F's left to give phase of the negotiating process with Donald Trump, because he was out there making a speech the other day and the teleprompter went down, and then he said, oh, well, this teleprompter went down, and unlike some other world leaders or something like that, I'm not going to claim that that's some type of conspiracy. We all know who that was directed to. You don't have to explicitly say who that one was about. Maybe the next time Mark Carney's on an escalator, that doesn't work either. He'll have something similar to say. According to Brock Wilson of CBC News, U.S. President Donald Trump took aim at Canada on Wednesday night, calling the country and its leadership nasty during a speech in Las Vegas in which he praised his administration's use of tariffs. Then the infamous quote. The U.S. president used the adjective to describe Canada a total of 5 times. We're nasty, 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 nasty. What's just that word? Nasty, 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 nasty. When asked about Trump's comments during an event on Thursday, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney described the situation as, quote, a tough negotiation. Quote, we can change the adjective and say nasty, if you will, Carney added. Carney said he spoke with Trump on the phone last week and that there would be other conversations to come. So basically, Mark Carney just said, Donald Trump, we understand that you think that we're nasty, but over here, we call that tough. So tough. And there will be other conversations. And they probably will be just as nasty. So, girl, you might want to learn to cope. I love it. Totally nonplussed. Trump's Wednesday night comments on Canada followed pointed remarks Carney made earlier in the day. When his teleprompter malfunctioned during a news conference on Toronto housing, Carney smiled and made a quip. So that's why we're nasty. That's why we're nasty. It's the sequencing. Quote, I would like to inform you that the teleprompter has ceased to function. Unlike a certain world leader, I do not view this as a conspiracy, he said. The comment was an apparent reference to Trump's demands for an investigation into, quote, triple sabotage after he encountered a halted escalator, a non-functioning teleprompter, and sound issues last year at the United Nations General Assembly, where he delivered a speech. Relations between Canada and the U.S. have been rocky of late as the two countries work to address trade irritants and an upcoming August 19 deadline, at which point the U.S. plans to put 50% tariffs on about 5% of Canadian exports to the country. Targeted goods range from alcohol to hockey sticks to cement. It seems that that's a standard line that they seem to have in these articles. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Chief Trade Negotiator Janice Charette are back in Washington this week for more meetings with their U.S. counterparts. The pair will meet with U.S. Trade Representative Greer at his office, Washington, D.C., yesterday afternoon, that was, because this was written yesterday here. On Tuesday, LeBlanc and Charette met with Jay Timmons, CEO of the National Association of Manufacturers. On Wednesday morning, LeBlanc met with North Dakota Republican Senator Kevin Cramer and Tennessee Republican Senator Bill Haggerty. Carney said he's been, quote, very involved in those talks. Carney has already addressed multiple trade irritants listed by the Trump administration, including killing a planned digital services tax and rolling back a Canadian content levy on streaming companies. Moves that appear to have done little to move the needle with the U.S. president. Again, want to put a little pin in that one and just remind you, kids and cubs, because we are doing more and more business with Europe, Europe is looking to have these types of provisions as well. So there could be a time, might be concessions that we are making now for form on things that we are going to come back and attempt to get, but with a group of people doing the safety in numbers thing. So while the conservatives are out there saying this, we've conceded, I don't think we've actually conceded on these things yet. I think that one of the reasons that we were able to put them on the table is because we know that we have a plan B to come back for them through another route. Also, with regard to the Canadian content levy on streaming companies, there was news about that maybe about a week and a half ago that it came out and everybody was presenting it as new. But if you had been following this show, you would know that it was a decision that was made a long time ago, a couple of months ago, when the CRTC recommended that these levy structures be put in place. And the government responded pretty quickly at the time, saying that they were not going to do that. And the basis on which they were not going to do that is because it would make these services more expensive, and we had an affordability issue at the time. That was their pretext then. It maintained 3 weeks later. You can not believe the pretext, but the story didn't change. And when the news came back out just a couple weeks ago, a couple days ago, everything that the government said was consistent with what they said at the time that they rejected the CRTC's recommendation on this. The story did not change. The Trump administration has also taken issue with multiple provincial bans on U.S. booze. The Distilled Spirits Council of the United States has called the bans, quote, devastating, highlighting that exports to Canada fell 63% last year. Good. Canada has maintained that the booze bans were a direct response to previous U.S. tariffs and would only end as part of a comprehensive trade agreement with the United States. Carney has not ruled out retaliation if the additional tariffs come to fruition, but last week he said he didn't see the value in using Canadian energy exports as a bargaining chip in negotiations. Quote, "We have time, and we have real constructive negotiations that are happening on a number of issues," Carney added on Wednesday. He's not panicked, which should inspire confidence. The last thing you want is people going into these rooms panicked. Now, also, with regard to this, Mark Carney put a little bit more information out into the public sphere that is probably intended to neutralize or counter the narratives, the really silly ones, that the Conservatives are putting out there. This is according to Émilie Bergeron of the Canadian Press. Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada's tone towards the United States is already, quote, quite firm. And I would believe that that's true, because I don't believe that, again, everything that we know about Mark Carney, right? He doesn't take any guff. He wants people to be prepared. He might even actually tear a strip off you if he's more prepared than you are on a file that you are supposed to be bringing him the expertise on. Right? We've seen him a couple of times in press conferences. Shut it down. Boom. Right? We know the Prime Minister can be quite firm. Now, there are ways to do that, but we saw that even in that first meeting in the Oval Office, right? When the Prime Minister made the quote, the comment to Donald Trump that as a real estate guy, he knows that there are some properties that are never for sale, like the White House, for example. And then Donald Trump came back again, and you saw Mark Carney go, no, not going to happen, not going to happen. It's didn't have to be acidic, didn't have to be aggressive, didn't have to be confrontational, but it was like, yeah, that's not happening. We could talk about it academically if you want, but it's not happening. So, right. Pretty firm. And he insisted that trade negotiations with Washington remain constructive as August 19th deadline for new U.S. tariff draw near. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose a new 50% tariffs on a wide range of Canadian imports beginning August 19th. Quote, Prime Minister's quote that I just read in the last article that finished it. "We have time. We have real negotiations, constructive negotiations on several issues." The Prime Minister was asked whether Canada should change its strategy or adopt a tougher stance towards the Trump administration. Carney suggested now is not the time to shift course. He noted that Canada's minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, Dominique LeBlanc, is in Washington alongside Canada's chief trade negotiator, Janice Charette, for a series of meetings aimed at advancing the talks. The pair also traveled to Washington last week, where they met with U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Quote, "I have conversations with the Americans myself, but this is a negotiation and this is not the time to change," the Prime Minister said. The new tariffs Trump has threatened would apply at a rate of 50% on a broad range of Canadian goods. Unlike previous measures, they would not exempt products that comply with the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement. The White House has said the latest round of tariffs is a response to provincial restrictions on alcohol, Canada's supply management system for dairy products, and certain automotive quotas. In response, Carney previously said trade negotiations with the United States would intensify. The tariff dispute launched by the U.S. president has now lasted for more than a year. In early July, Washington announced it would not renew CUSMA in its current form, and In early July, Washington announced it would not renew CUSMA in its current form as Canada and Mexico had hoped. Instead, the United States triggered an unprecedented annual review process. Last month, LeBlanc told the Canadian press that the annual review process was a road paved with unknowns. Quote, "We have suggested bringing structure and rigor to the review process the Americans have initiated," said LeBlanc. "The annual review can be renewed each year for up to 10 years. If the three countries fail to agree on a path forward, CUSMA would expire after its current term ends in 2036. Canada hopes bilateral negotiations with the United States will ultimately reduce sector-specific tariffs, including those on steel and aluminium." The Globe and Mail reported that one option under consideration is for Canada to introduce export quotas on steel and aluminium in an effort to reduce U.S. tariffs on those sectors. The report, which cited anonymous sources, could not be independently confirmed by the Canadian press. Asked Wednesday about the possibility of export quotas, Carney declined to comment. Quote, "This is not the time to trigger the options, but we have options," he said. LeBlanc's office said the minister also met Tuesday with Jay Timmins, president and chief executive of the Officer of the National Association of Manufacturers, before meeting Wednesday with Republican Senators Kevin Cramer of North Dakota and Bill Haggerty of Tennessee, as we had reported in the previous article as well, or in previous articles. So, Mark Carney, again, yeah, we're not rolling over. We're not being conceded. We're not conceding. We're not pushover. Our tone is quite firm. We know what we want. We're not willing to settle for less unless there's going to be a major concession on something else from the United States. We believe that no deal is better than a bad deal. And we've got time. Those are not words that the United States wants to hear, especially if they want to get a deal real fast. Quick, quick, quick. On that front, when we're talking about being firm, supply management, one of the reasons that the United States slapped these extra tariffs. The United States keep on representing to their citizens that that Canada applies ridiculous triple-digit quotas on dairy products, not quotas, tariffs on dairy products. Never tells people that these are quoted tariffs. You get to export a certain amount, and once you reach a threshold, then those tariffs apply. And he also never tells anybody that the United States has never come close to actually reaching those quotas. They've been set so high. So, or the Americans have just not been taking advantage of the quota that's available to them. So we need more, but you're not using what you got now. We need more, or we'll tariff you. Yeah, we're not moved by that. But according to the Toronto Star, actually this is the Canadian press staff, as it appears in the Toronto Star, while in Chicoutimi, Prime Minister Mark Carney says his government is loyal to the supply management system protecting Canada's dairy sector, and is pointing to the Liberals' choice of candidate in an upcoming by-election as proof of that commitment. Supply management has been cited by the U.S. as a key irritant in trade negotiations, and President Donald Trump has complained repeatedly about the level of U.S. dairy farmers' access to the Canadian market. Taking questions from reporters Thursday after touring an aluminium facility in Saguenay, Quebec, Carney said the Liberals' chance of former dairy... Let's try that again, because I misread that word. Taking questions from reporters Thursdays after touring an aluminium facility in Saguenay, Quebec, Carney said the Liberals' choice of former dairy producer Daniel Gobey to run in the Chicoutimi-Le Fjord by-election shows the government is loyal to supply management. Quote, "I've been clear since the start of my campaign for the Liberal leadership because I believe in supply management. It is important to stabilize prices for Canadian consumers and protect a way of life for small farmers," Carney said in French. Quote, "I'm more than happy that Mr. Gobey is our candidate." Gobey has served as the chair of the Quebec Dairy Producers Association as a board for the Dairy Farmers of Canada. The election is set for August 31. Former Conservative MP Richard Martel resigned the seat just before the summer after Carney appointed him to the Senate. Carney made his remarks on supply management as Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Jeunesse Charette, trade negotiator. Let's try that again. Carney's made his remarks on supply management as Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Janice Charette, chief trade negotiator, were in Washington for talks with U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Here, Thursday's meeting in the U.S. Capitol comes less than 2 weeks before Trump is set to hit Canada with another round of tariffs on a wide range of goods. A readout from Let's try that one more time. I'm sorry. A readout from Global Affairs Canada said LeBlanc Charette met with provincial and territorial ministers responsible for trade Thursday to discuss the latest developments in Canada-U.S. trade relations. It stated the pair, quote, reiterated that Canada is engaging intensively with the United States to address outstanding trade issues to the mutual benefit of both countries. The readout said LeBlanc and Charette, who both took part in the meeting virtually from Washington, reiterated the government's commitment to working closely with provinces and territories. At a news conference in the St. John's Let's try that one more time. At a news conference in St. John's, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre criticized Carney for not yet securing a deal with the Americans. Quote, he promised he would have a deal by July 21, 2025. He never promised that. He promised he would have elbows up. He still does. He promised he'd negotiate a win. He's working on it. Still no win. Yeah, because the other side apparently doesn't seem to want Pierre. Still no elbows. After a year and a half later. There have been plenty of elbows. Donald Trump wouldn't be so mad if there were not elbows. Chepoliev. What a dumbass. Poilievre specifically pointed to the government abandoning its digital services tax, agreeing to boost military spending and removing counter tariffs on the United States. Yes, we did remove some counter tariffs on the United States because, as we know, with counter tariffs, they sometimes are very effective for a short period of time, but they may not be a permanent solution. And there comes a time when you apply them, if you're leaving them on after a certain time, after which they become effective, they just end up hurting you more than they hurt the other person. Those are the ones we removed. We still do have counter tariffs on steel and aluminum and other certain things. We did not remove all of them. We removed the ones that were doing us damage. We kept the ones that were being effective. As Carney toured the aluminum plant Thursday, he spoke about the sector's struggles in the trade war with the United States. Quote, from the moment the United States imposed tariffs on aluminum, the price of aluminum in the United States quickly rose, Carney told reporters in French. It's not a good thing for anyone. It reduces competitiveness of American businesses, and it's a challenge for our businesses. So there you go. So, not going to budge on supply management, it would appear. Meanwhile, back in Canada, while all of this is happening on the United States side, we're getting news that gives us reason for some optimism. Mild optimism, cautious optimism, but still some optimism nonetheless, according to the Canadian press. And this came out today, and it was you kits who let me know in the chat that it was out. Canada's jobs numbers beat economists' expectations in July, while the unemployment rate fell to its lowest level in 2 years, Statistics Canada said on Friday. Pierre, here are the results you've been asking for, buddy. Yeah, I know you don't like them because it means Canada's not failing and that doesn't work for you, but here are the results you asked for. The agencies, really, the lowest level of unemployment in 2 years, despite everything that Donald Trump is trying to do to us. The agency's labor force survey said Canada added a surprising 75,000 jobs in July, blowing past expectations of economists in a Reuters poll, which predicted a modest 15,000 job gain. That's 5 times, a 5% beat. Again, Pierre, you want results? Find a way to be upset that we beat a result by 500%. Go! Those jobs were split between full and part-time work. Statistics Canada said the country is now up 181,000 jobs since April and 196,000 from a year ago. We're up 181,000 jobs since April. You'd think the Conservatives would be able to find a way to be happy about that. Quote, it's stronger growth than we were maybe anticipating a few months ago, said CIBC senior economist Andrew Grantham in an interview. Quote, it is consistent with what we're seeing in terms of GDP figures that the Canadian economy is recovering, even though we do see that there's more slack in the economy to go, and this recovery will need to continue before we really have to worry about Bank of Canada interest rate hikes. Canada's unemployment rate ticked down 0.1 percentage points from June to Let's try that again. Canada's unemployment rate ticked down 0.1 percentage points from June to 6.4%. Statistics Canada said the employment rate is also down half a percentage point from a year ago, as more people who are looking for work have been successful at finding jobs than this time last year. Quote, the labor market is not yet strong, RBC Assistant Chief Economist Nathan Jansen said in a note to clients. The unemployment rate is still higher than normal, and wage growth slowed in July, but it has been improving despite still significant U.S. tariff uncertainty and higher energy prices. Much of July's job gains were in the wholesale and retail trade sectors, which added 21,000 positions, down 50,000 jobs from a year ago. Finance, insurance, real estate, rental, and leasing added 18,000 jobs last month, while professional services. Let me try that again. Finance, insurance, and real estate, rental, and leasing added 100. Okay, let's try that one more time. Finance, insurance, real estate, rental, and leasing added 18,000 jobs last month, while professional, scientific, and technical services added 17,000. The public administration sector shed 15,000 jobs last month, and the agricultural sector lost 9,600. Desjardins Managing Director Royce Mendes said the labor market still has a long road to recovery. Quote, the latest job numbers add to the evidence that businesses are finding ways to navigate the current trade-related uncertainty, Mendes said, adding a Bank of Canada interest rate hike isn't likely to come until 2027. Quote, that said, even with the big gains seen in July, the labor market isn't back to full health. As evidence of that, the annual pace of wage growth decelerated further, right around the rate of inflation. Average hourly wages were up 2.8% in July year over year, though it decelerated from a 3.3% growth in June. The unemployment rate among young people remained virtually unchanged in July at 12.6%, Statistics Canada said, which is down 1.9 percent points from a year ago. Quote, this is definitely a better summer than what we've seen in the last 2 years for young people trying to find jobs, said Andrew Grantham. Now, in addition to that, we also had some good numbers about Canada's trade surplus. This is according to the Canadian Press as published in the Globe and Mail. It says here that Canada's merchandise trade surplus increased to $3.9 billion in June as a weaker loonie pushed trade values higher, Statistics Canada said on Tuesday. The agency said the result compared with a surplus of $3.7 billion in May, which was revised from its initial reading of $4.2 billion. StatsCan noted the average value of the loonie, which affects trade transactions, dropped 1.7 cents in June compared to May, the largest monthly decline since October 2022. It said a weaker loonie pushed monthly trade values in Canadian dollars higher when expressed in US dollars. It said exports declined 2% in June while imports dropped 2.1%. In Canadian dollars, total exports gained 0.4% in June to post the fifth consecutive monthly increase and hit a record $77.5 billion. Exports of metal and non-metallic minerals rose 16.5%, boosted in part by higher gold shipments. The overall gain in exports was largely offset by a 10% drop in energy product exports in June as oil prices fell. Total imports edged up 0.2% in June to $73.6 billion, largely driven by 59% surge in computers and computer peripherals imports, such as processing units used in data centers. Computer and computer peripherals shipments were also a primary reason imports from the United States rose 3%, the agency said. In volume terms, total exports were up 1.1%, while imports were down 1.5%. Meanwhile, StatsCan said total exports in the second quarter rose 13.1%, the strongest quarterly increase in percentage terms since the third quarter of 2020. Let me repeat that. Total exports in the second quarter rose 13.3. Total exports in the second quarter rose 13.1%, the strongest quarterly increase in percentage terms since the third quarter of 2020. Almost half of the increase came from higher energy products exports as oil prices rose amid the conflict in the Middle East, StatsCan said. Exports of motor vehicles and parts were also up 19.3% following 2 quarters of declines, and that's despite everything that the United States is trying to do to kill our auto sector. Quote, June's data confirm that a further rebound in export volumes from those lows seen in 2025 appears to have been a large driver of strength in GDP for the second quarter, said Andrew Grantham, senior economist at CIBC Capital Markets. but he said the threat of new tariffs could slow or stall that momentum. Export volumes could see a small bump in the next couple of months if companies potentially impacted by new U.S. tariffs look to front run their implementation, but there would be a negative effect afterwards if these new tariffs actually come into effect. So basically, if people bring in a whole bunch of inventory before these tariffs are supposed to apply so they can get them cheaper, which means that they will buy less over the next couple months until they deplete the inventory and then start buying more. So there will be a delay and there will be a lag. That happened before as well. So again, when you're looking at the numbers, sometimes they're not a quick reaction. Sometimes there's a multi-month lag before something shows up there as well. The U.S. government announced last month a plan to impose a 50% tariff on hundreds of categories of Canadian goods. The tariffs are slated to take effect August 19 and would be imposed using an obscure legal tool dating back to the Great Depression. Mark Ercolao, a senior economist at TD, said the annual review of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement will further prolong trade uncertainty. In a separate release, StatsCan reported monthly service exports edged down 0.2% to $20.8 billion, while imports of services fell 0.4% to $21 billion. Combined goods and services exports increased 0.3% to $98.2 billion in June, while imports edged up 0.1% to $94.7 billion. There you go. Oh, I think we have a bit of a guest here. See if they pop up. I pressed the button. Ah, there it is. Just a little delay. Hey! Oh, can't hear you. It's Mr. Grizzly. We've got two bears today. Oh, we we can see you, but we can't hear you. Oops. Okay. Well, while he's trying to figure out getting his sound there, I will keep on bringing this to you. So that was information about the trade surplus. There was a little bit extra here, but it might be the same source. No, this is Ariel Rabinovich of Global News. Let's see if there's anything additional there in this story. Says this is the fourth straight month that Canada saw trade surplus with the world. Canadian dollar was worth on average about 71 cents US in June, down roughly 1.7 cents from May, the biggest monthly decline since October 2022. This means the Canadian dollar may not go as far as the US dollar, but when Canadian companies are paid in US dollars for their merchandise, each US dollar converts into more loonies. Since most international trade is priced in US dollars, the weaker loonie increased the Canadian dollar value of exports that Statistics Canada tracks. In US dollar terms, the agency said Canada exports actually fell 2% in June, while imports declined 2.1%. The value of all exports in June increased to a record $77.5 billion, up from $77.1 billion in May, with the volume of those exports increasing 1.1% in the same period, the agency says. So let's see, since Mr. Grizzly is not able to come on, let's see if I can get back to full screen here. That might work. It might just take a moment. There we go. Says here, out of 11 sectors, Statistics Canada tracks 6 saw increases in export values. So that's pretty good. Says here that export of metals and non-metallic mineral products in total value increased the most by 16.5% in June, as reported, but it has some additional detail. Within the sector, the category comprising unwrought gold, silver, and platinum group metals and their alloys increased 27.9%. There was also a sharp drop of 28.8% for exports of Canadian unwrought aluminium and aluminium alloys, one of the main targets of U.S. tariffs. Let's see if Mr. Grizzly can join us now. In June, Canada also exported... Oh, hello. Hello, good sir. Oh, I don't think he can hear us. Nope. That's okay. I'm not guessing. I don't think he can hear us, unfortunately. In June, Canada also exported a lot of copper ores and concentrates to countries like Japan, China, Finland, and South Korea. The total value of those exports hit a record of $934 million, which was 20% higher than May. In the same period, energy exports decreased by 10%, including an 11% drop for crude oil exports alone, as global prices fell compared to May. Some of the notable gains in most sectors also fit into Canada's broader push to diversify exports beyond the United States amid ongoing U.S. tariffs. Prime Minister Mark Carney has vowed to double exports to countries other than the U.S. by 2035. Statistics Canada says exports to countries other than the U.S. increased 0.7% in June, and that was mainly from exports of unwrought gold shipped to the United Kingdom. Although Canada has a trade deficit with countries other than the U.S., that deficit narrowed to $6.1 billion in June from $7.4 billion in May. At the same time, Canada's imports from the U.S. increased by 3% in June, and mainly on higher imports of computers and computer peripherals. Nathan Jansen, Assistant Chief Economist at the Royal Bank of Canada, said in a note that an increase in imports of these computers and peripherals was likely tied to use in AI data centers being built in Canada and represents, quote, a positive sign for domestic Canadian investment spending. Tuesday's report also comes after the federal government announced last week it will be launching a strategic exports office aimed at helping Canadian businesses land lucrative foreign contracts. And I did see the press conference with that with Maninder Sidhu, our international trade minister. And there's some clips I want to show you at some point with regard to that. But yes, it will be an office that will be aimed at helping Canadian businesses land lucrative foreign contracts as Ottawa looks to diversify trade beyond the United States. The office will be an arm of the federal government that will help Canadian businesses and government officials be, quote, better coordinated. Quote, we are launching Canada's first ever strategic exports office working side by side to help our best companies win the best contracts and the biggest contracts and the toughest. Let's try that one more time. All right, let's try that again. We are launching Canada's first ever strategic exports office working side by side to help our best companies win the biggest contracts in the toughest markets around the world, Sidhu said. Think of the Strategic Exports Office as your government-level deal-maker. It brings strategic advocacy, government financing, and diplomatic support together in one place. The office will have diplomatic and financial experts along with business backing from industries, Sidhu said. We'll try to see if we could get Mr. Grizzly one more time. Hello, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes. You're breaking up a little bit, but we do hear you. How are you? Yeah. It's not coming through.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I don't know.
It's working now. It's working now.
I say,
Have you been? Stop working.
I'm now than I was.
Yeah, it's not working, my friend.
Just a sec.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're better. All right. I'll continue with the story, and hopefully we'll get Mr. Grizzly back here. It says the move to open that office comes as Canada looks to find more trading partners across the world as it stares down fresh, sweeping 50% tariffs on a wide range of exports from to the United States. Earlier this month, Trump signed 3 executive orders, each one using a different justification for the new tariff. The provincial and territorial boycotts on American alcohol, Canada's retaliatory tariffs on U.S.-made vehicles and auto parts, and quotas on American dairy imports under Canada's supply management system. So and this goes with the Prime Minister's promise in 2025, October 2025, to double Canada's non-U.S. exports. Canada said the expansion of international trade beyond the U.S. will generate an additional $300 billion in trade, which will bolster the economy in the face of Trump's tariffs. Diversifying trade will help Canada weather the uncertainty of U.S. tariffs, Sidhu said Thursday. Quote, if you have one customer buying your product, they will set the price. But if we're able to open up the market and have more customers, that gives our industry a competitive advantage, he said. When asked why Ottawa could not advocate for Canadian businesses with foreign governments with existing government bodies like Export Development Canada, which was a very good question that was asked during that press conference, Sidhu said Canada is, quote, losing out on business because we're not as coordinated as other countries. They would get to the finish line, another state leader would swoop in, a trade minister would swoop in and make a call, and billions of dollars of deals would be lost to competitors. The new office would offer better coordination for businesses looking to get contracts overseas, he said. So that was another development, another thing that we are doing here in Canada to sort of shore ourselves up. All right, we'll try to see if we can get Mr. Grizzly on with full sound one last time. Here you go. Hello, sir. Again, it's cutting out. Yeah, you're frozen.
Set out. I'm just using speakers.
All right. And Mr. Grizzly decided to bow out here because it was not working. I hate that when we get him so not often enough, and when he has an opportunity to pop in like that, it's just it's so frustrating that it doesn't work. All right. The other final thing that we have here is with regard to Canada, GDP numbers came out lately, and they're really, really good, according to Paula Tran of the Financial Post. So let's see if I can bring this article up here. And according to this, it says Canadian exports grew faster than imports in the second quarter of 2026 as higher oil prices led to a large increase in the value of energy product exports. Total exports rose by 13.1% for the quarter, while imports increased by 4.2%. It was the strongest quarterly increase in exports since the third quarter of 2020, according to Statistics Canada data published on Tuesday. In real or volume terms, exports were up 5.4%, while Let's try that again. In real or volume terms, exports were up 5.4%, while imports were up 1.4%. For the month of June, Canada's global trade surplus widened slightly to $3.9 billion from $3.7 billion in May, marking the fourth consecutive monthly trade surplus. Merchandise exports edged up by 0.4% due to higher exports of gold to the United Kingdom and higher purchases of Canadian-held gold by foreign residents, an increase of around 27.9%, which helped offset lower exports of energy products as crude oil prices fell from their highs. Then it goes on to say here, Statistics Canada officials noted, however, that the depreciation of the Canadian dollar impacted import and export values in June because most transactions are completed in US dollars and must be converted. So that's what we mentioned before as well. Not sure why this is. This was supposed to be an article about the GDP numbers, and it was not, so it was mislabeled. So, however, I did double up, so to make sure I had a backup in case. And this is according to CBC News. Canada's economy grew by 0.3% in May, continuing the country's growth for a second straight month and putting the economy on track for a solid second quarter, according to Statistics. Increased top Statistics Canada own initial estimate for 0.1% growth in the month. The agency says 13 of 20 industrial sectors, including construction, manufacturing, finance, and insurance, and the public sector, contributed to the month's gains. Mining, quarrying, oil and gas extraction sector rose 1% in May, leading growth for a second straight month. Some maintenance work that usually happens in the month was completed early or deferred, which paved the way for more extraction. Transportation and warehousing also increased as pipelines pushed more natural gas out of the country and onto the market. Offices of real estate agents were also especially busy due to a rise in home selling activity, boosting the real estate and rental and leasing sector. An early estimate for June also shows the economy on track to expand by 0.2% in that month, with Statistics Canada also revising April's GDP growth up slightly to 0.6%. That puts the Canadian economy on track for a solid second quarter of growth. The data agency's advance estimate has real GDP rising 3.4% on an annualized basis. That is a very strong economy in the second quarter, marking a sharp rebound from the mild contraction in the first 3 months of the year. The decline in the first quarter of 2026 made for the second straight quarter of GDP contraction on an annualized basis, which led to fears of a technical recession. But as we said, there has to be more stuff. The pain has to be deep and seem to be persistent, and that was not the case. We were not getting those signals. But BMO chief economist Doug Porter said these new numbers show that the weakness earlier this year was overstated, and that Pierre, once again, was so eager to jump on a piece of bad news to make us feel bad about ourselves and turn us against our own government, rather than keeping his powder dry to see if this really was something. Policymakers, quote, after all the collective angst about After all the collective angst about a possible technical recession just a few months ago, it's now clear that the underlying economy is still grinding ahead, Porter wrote in a note to investors. Policymakers likely won't read too much into these quarterly numbers yet, though, according to CIBC economist Andrew Grantham, since the numbers are often revised. Plus, he says some one-off factors like oil maintenance being pushed and positive impacts from the FIFA World Cup likely help boost GDP in the second quarter, so Grantham predicts growth to be a bit slower in coming months. Quote, we continue to see slack in the economy fading only slowly, and for the Bank of Canada to keep interest rates on hold throughout the remainder of the year. So, trade is going well. GDP numbers are going well. We have projects that are moving forward. Yes, there is a situation with the United States, but the United States, every single day, its negotiating position with us doesn't get better. Its debt does not get smaller. The bond yields do not get significantly lower. The situation with the Strait of Hormuz is not getting particularly better. In fact, Donald Trump is managing to negotiate himself into a situation where he's not going to have one but two straits closed, the one in the Red Sea as well. The military stockpile is depleted. He has less and less leverage. With every single day, the situation for him becomes worse and worse. So again, when Prime Minister Mark Carney says we've got time because he can see the path that we are on, 3.4% annualized growth in the second quarter, the path that the United States is on, 1.5%. The United States bond yields getting bigger, the bond spread getting larger, which again, as this article says, lowers the value of our Canadian dollars. But since we get paid in US dollars for what we sell, when we convert them back, we get more. It also means that for all our big projects that we want to build, our borrowing costs are significantly lower than those of the United States, given our credit rating and given the size of our debt and how manageable it is compared. We're doing okay. As a country overall, big picture macroeconomically, we're doing okay. We still have that K-shaped economy thing that we keep on talking about, those who are homeowners and those who have stocks. And, they are doing much better than those who rent and those who do not have stocks and investments. That's for sure. Yes, and we need to do more for the bottom rungs, the bottom bar of that K-shaped economy. We have to do a lot more. A lot more. But we're doing okay. With all the curveballs that have been thrown at us so far, we're doing okay. We're thriving even, it would seem. Not as much as we would be if none of these things were thrown our way. But then again, if none of these things were thrown our way, we would probably be engaging in the type of economic activity that we are right now. Right? The situation created the necessity. And necessity is the mother of invention. We are reinventing ourselves as a nation. And so far, the plan seems to be working. We're seeing the elements of the plan come in place. We're seeing the interconnected elements of the plan being woven together. Yes, there's another pipeline going out west, but we're also seeing a big electrification push, and we see how these things are linked. Right? there's a lot of stuff happening. There is a lot of stuff happening. And unless the United States decides to do something very dramatic and cinematic, possibly as an end game run, and you have to realize that one of the reasons that the United States keeps on picking on us, right, is because of his madman theory. If he shows the world that he's willing to do this to their alleged best customer and ally, well, what chance do they have? They might as well just comply, obey in advance. That's the objective of this. So, Donald Trump, um, if you think we've been nasty, you ain't seen nothing yet, and you can sit on our maple and spin. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless, so tell your peeps and poops all about us because, that's how the word gets out. You are influencers in your own circle, so please let them know about the quality of our show and what it is that you get from it. Okay, if you would like to help us, here's some things that you could do. One of the things you can do is scan this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page. If you're not already there, like, share, and subscribe. Click our buttons. Get freaky with them. We don't judge. We don't judge. Also, click our notification bell and click on all so that you can receive notifications when we have new content. And if you are watching this, not live, but fewer than 7 days, on your tablet or your cell phone, please swipe left on the comment section and you will see an opportunity to offer us some. Makes it such that smaller audience shows like ourselves can gain more exposure. So thank you for that. If you would like to help us in other ways because you do believe that our show deserves some support to continue the work that we do, we do incur some costs to bring it to you, and we would really appreciate a donation, an enthusiastic expression of encouragement from you to us to keep going. And you can do that by scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our coffee page. That's coffee.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. That's our tip jar, or that we call affectionately the Emergency Hydration Fund, where you can offer your favorite beaver a cup of hot chocolate so he can maintain his levels. And since I'm getting darker over the summer, I need more hot chocolate. Just put them in my paws. And a cup of hot coffee, or maybe a local lager for our dear Mr. Grizzly, because we have a podcast day coming on. So, yeah, just give us an ad of Beaver, an ad of Grizzly. We would like that. And if there's anything additionally left over, well, we put it in to our internet fees and subscription fees and all those types of things that we need to be able to bring this show to you, usually 5 days a week. Not this week, of course, because I was on vacation, but usually 5 days a week. So we thank you for your support and your constant generosity. If it wasn't for you, we certainly would not be in our sixth season. So thank you. Very, very, very grateful for everything that you do, kids and cubs. If you're not able to contribute financially, please do not worry. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address, and we want you to contribute in word by letting us know, good, bad, or ugly, what you think about the show, offering us some suggestions for guests for the interview project, letting us know about your good news, or asking us questions that you want us to answer about politics or the show. Send them all to truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, and of course, do send us your good news as well. On our socials, you can reach us at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook. We have our Instagram as well. We have the Damn Fam Discord. We have our Beaver Bites Substack. We have our coffee page, as we just mentioned. Lots of ways for you to remain in touch with us. And right down here, if you're watching on our YouTube, our comment section, if you leave a note there, that's absolutely where you're most guaranteed to have us see you. We read everything that you sent us, even though we're not able to answer everyone, and we thank you for your contributions. And remember our hashtags: Kids Who Cook, Kids Who Cultivate, and Kids Who Craft. If you've got some good stuff going on and you want to brag, show off a little because you made something pretty, or just give us some good ideas because we like that stuff too. Provide some information, some inspiration. Thank you so much for all that you do to contribute to our little community here, making it the best damn fam in all of podcasting. Because democracy is something that you do. I do not have the links to the petitions today, so I can't do that, but I do know that we have leadership races, for the Nova Scotia Liberals, for the New Brunswick Progressive Conservatives, for the Ontario Liberals, and the Federal Greens. So please get involved there. We also have by-elections, 3 federal ones in Capilano, North Vancouver, Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, and Beaches East York. And we have 3 of them in Ontario, which I do not remember all of them off the top of my head. I know that one of them is Scarborough Southwest. I do not remember the other 2, but please again get involved, find out about your candidates, and for the by-elections, call Elections Ontario if you're in Ontario, or Elections Canada, and see if they need people to staff the polling stations. It's always a wonderful experience. All right. Let's see. What else do we have, kids and cubs? I guess it's time for words of wisdom. I'm just going to say enjoy the weekend. Have a great time. Disconnect from some stuff. There's a lot of noise and stuff, and it can get a little heavy. Just have a good time. Have fun. There you go. Those are my words of wisdom. We all need a little fun. Have some fun this weekend. And if you want to do that by joining us at the podcast tomorrow, that'd be a good way to do that. See what I did there? All right, kids and cubs. It could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. At the count of 3, I will need you to give me a little Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. I will not have an Easter egg, mainly because I've got a few minutes to get out and run an errand. So at the count of 3, if you can say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. 1, 2, and 3. Oh, that's the good stuff right there. Since you asked so nicely, how can I deny you? Here is a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. If I can get the graphics thing to load up. Because it seems I'm not sticking the dismount today. Boy, here we go. Bye, everybody. And I do not know why the
You are
row will
listening
not
to
start.
a True North Eager Beaver
Oh, well.
Media Incorporated
It's
podcast.
been a day like this on the
The
show.
True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought
So,
to you
I
by
guess-
our founding sponsors. The Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community. And The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.